My, where has the time gone? Election day is just 4 days away, and our political team is working to make sure you stay on top of the major races you will find on your ballot. Let's bring in, as we do every Friday, co-host of 11Alive, the Georgia Vote, Zach Merchant. All right, Zach, do you feel like this has flown by? We've gotten here pretty quick.
You said it best. My, oh my, how has the time gone? We feel like 4 days till Election Day. It kind of feels like it was 4 days since this last big election we had in 2024.
Yeah.
I was promised an off year. That has really not been the vibe of this 2025 cycle so far.
You know what? Promises get broken.
They do sometimes.
Yeah, this is an ever-changing industry. Yeah, don't put any bets on that. But for you, you know this ballot through and through. What are some of the biggest races that voters are going to see on Tuesday?
You know, the two races at the top of the ticket this year, which is an interesting thing, they're just in its own right, because it is the first time that these races have been at the top of the ticket, maybe ever, certainly in many, many, many years, is for the Public Service Commission. You might say, okay, I know a lot about the Public Service Commission. Some of our viewers may also be thinking, what the heck is the PSC?
Yeah.
Their job is to serve as a regulatory body. They oversee a lot of public utilities. Most visibly, they regulate power and power rates in Georgia. So there's a real tie to when you see a power bill to the regulation going on at the PSC. There are two Republican incumbents up for re-election. Two Democrats are challenging them. This race has gotten a lot of attention this year.
It has, because your Georgia Power bill has gotten a lot of your wallet this year.
The AP reports 6 rate hikes in recent years. 6 rate hikes. So these power rate increases that a lot of people say they're seeing in their bills, those rate hikes are coming from the PSC. Now, we interviewed all 4 of the PSC candidates. The incumbents say it's not just about pricing, it's also about reliability, it's about a mix of where we're getting our energy, and they also point to the fact that right now there's a rate hike freeze in effect. These incumbents are Tim Echols, Republican, and Fitz Johnson, a Republican, but their challengers, as you can imagine, Peter Hubbard, Alicia Johnson, they are talking as much as they can about those bills, right?
Yeah, I had a conversation over dinner with my cousin last night. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. Power bill over $300. And so you compare that to a home. What do you think's happening there? Yeah, no one has extra money, so I know why that one is at the top of the list for sure. All right, so what does it mean for a midterm election year? There's
a lot of storytelling happening already. And you think when you talk about an off cycle, because that's the sort of term of art, this is an off cycle year. The big years are the presidential years, 2024 for instance, and the midterms, 2026, 2025 sort of sits sandwiched in between. But because there's only one big statewide race, it's these two PSC races going on right now, the Democratic Party in Georgia, the Republican Party in Georgia, they're, in some ways, I don't want to simplify it too much, but they're looking around for what's the biggest thing on the ballot right now for us to work on.
For them to jump on,
You're looking around and you say, okay, I guess it's the PSC this year. And there's a lot of storytelling being built about both parties want to shape the narrative going into this big 2026 election year. We've seen it on the Georgia Vote already for many weeks now. Republican strategists, Democratic strategists, both trying to shape the narrative going into this new year. Democrats are hoping to flip these seats, or at least be more competitive than in past years, so they can go into this big election year and say, hey, look, we've got momentum. Republicans, who have, save for a few federal races, and big federal races, we're talking about Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator Jon Ossoff, have largely had a lock on statewide elected office in Georgia for the better part of the last 2 decades. They want to hold on to these seats.
What do you think the chances are, especially with the issues? Because when you talk about the PSC, and when you talk about it, you know, what was supposed to be an off year like 2025, the voter turnout numbers tend to be pretty low. So do we really get the full picture? Is that the true story if the voters aren't really exercising their voices?
You know, it's a great question, and it's one that we've talked about on our show. You know, the word bellwether gets thrown around sometimes. When turnout is so low, and it is expected to be quite low in this PSC race, and I say race, there's 2, but we can talk about it generally. It's the PSC race. You can bet that whoever does well, that party is going to hype it up as much as possible and say, hey, look at this, look at this.
It's a landslide.
And the party that doesn't do well, they'll say exactly that. It was low turnout, there were idiosyncrasies. One thing that both Democrats and Republicans and neutral observers have all pointed to is that the dynamics of this race could pose some challenges to the Republican incumbents. And this is what they say they mean by that. Right now, because there's no other big statewide race, there's not a Governor Brian Kemp, there's not some big statewide Republican on the ballot to draw a lot of Republican voters to the the voting booths, there's lots of municipal races on the ballot.
Yeah.
In many cities that in our state tend to tilt more Democratic. So if you can imagine a scenario where somebody maybe wants to go cast a ballot in the Atlanta mayoral race or in South Fulton, they're not all going to be Democratic voters, of course, but there's likely going to be more of them than Republicans. They look at that ballot and they say, okay, who else is on here? They see a PSC race, and the thinking goes, they may vote for the same party that brought them there for the municipal. Both Republican incumbents we talked to, and one, Tim Echols, he's been on the PSC for almost 15 years. He is no stranger to PSC races. They admitted they have some trepidation about how this is going to go for them. But they could also be, working the ref a little bit, lowering expectations and trying to get people motivated to come out and vote.
Yeah, not a shoe-in for sure. And you talked about the Atlanta mayoral race. That's one that people are going to see as we get, further down to the local races. This has been so interesting to me. All three candidates, no political experience, going against Mayor Andre Dickens. It seems like it's a sure thing that he's going to be reelected, and I think his performance during this election season has shown that. Do you think that's what the community is taking away from this too?
You never want to say it's a sure thing about anything, of course, in politics. I don't want to get my crystal ball out here one way or the other. It was telling that Mayor Dickens skipped, and I think we're actually looking at some images on the screen here. He skipped the most recent mayoral debate.
That was it for me.
He skipped it.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what the thinking was on that, but he is an incumbent. He is viewed as a strong incumbent. You might imagine that his campaign saw it as something that really wasn't going to move the needle either way. I think the thinking in his camp is it's going to be a pretty comfortable night for him. But you know what? You never know which way things are going to go.
Yeah.
There's also questions. You bring up Mayor Dickens. He played a reasonably prominent role in 2024, acting as a surrogate at times for the Democratic presidential ticket. Got some visibility nationally. Atlanta, of course, has been in the spotlight for many years. It's a major American city. Who knows what he may be thinking about doing 5, 10, 15 years down the road in his own political career. Something to keep in mind if you're an Atlanta or a Georgia voter.
Yeah, oh, you know what? I want to double back on something because this just popped in my mind when you talked about how instrumental he was in 2024. Another voice that we're always, used to hearing in the political cycle, big or small, is Stacey Abrams. She did a super deep dive teaching people about the PSC on her Instagram page, but it's like, but what are you doing?
That is the question. And if I recall correctly, you asked her that a couple months ago.
I asked her directly, and I have never received a curveball that was so sharp in all of my 20 years of being a journalist.
She didn't say she was running. She didn't say she wasn't running. The dynamics in Georgia are so interesting. The joke is, close your eyes and open them, and you're going to see somebody running for governor.
Yeah.
The Democratic field has at least a half dozen people running for governor right now. Stacey Abrams ran twice. It was unsuccessful, but people credit her run, particularly the first run in 2018, with really raising the bar for Democrats. She hasn't said one way or the other, but the thinking is, if she did enter the race, and we don't know, if she did, she would come in with a formidable backing and a formidable ability to fundraise. But Democrats also tell me, unlike in years past, they wouldn't get out of the way for her. It would be a competitive primary.
Okay. All right. They duke it out. Zach Merchant, always great talking to you. Appreciate it.